Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome to my channel. My name is Kylie if you're new, and today, well, I've decided to kick off the year with a bit of a rant. So my first movie review of the year is gonna be a little bit more on the ranty side, so buckle up, folks. But as you saw by my title, today I'm reviewing Leatherface from 2017. This received a 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, and if you're not familiar with the story, here's a synopsis. A teenage Leatherface escapes from a mental hospital with 3 other inmates, kidnapping a young nurse and taking her on a road trip from hell while being pursued by a lawman out for revenge. I only have about 5 fun facts from this movie because this movie itself and everything surrounding it is unfortunately just so boring. IMDb did not provide very much, so here we go for the fun facts. The Sawyer house scene in the 1974 film was fully rebuilt actually for this film, because now you're probably aware the original house has been converted into a restaurant, which I do hope to visit someday. It is a dream of mine to like go on a road trip with my boyfriend. We want to buy a van, like a really cute, nice little van, and deck it out and make it all modern and stuff. Sorry, no, okay, I'm gonna try not to go on so many tangents. This was Tobe Hooper's final film as a producer before his death in 2017. And he was only in his 70s, but he did die of natural causes apparently. This is the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie not to be filmed in the United States. It was actually filmed in Bulgaria for budgetary reasons. I cannot think of a more random place to shoot a film. And finally, Stefan, or is it Steven? I don't know, because sometimes Steven is spelled like Stefan. So Stefan or Steven Dorff plays Sheriff Hal Hartman in this film, who is the father of Bert Hartman from Texas Chainsaw 3D in 2013. So there are actually more connections to other films than meets the eye. Oh my god. No! By the way, this will be a totally spoiler-free review because like I said, I don't really have much to say about this movie. I'm not really gonna get into the plot because there wasn't much of one. So anyways, let's get started. So you've probably gathered by now that I did not like this film in the slightest. I wasn't even gonna make a full review of it because it was so dull, but then I was like, oh wait. I thought about it though, and I realized that I didn't review Texas Chainsaw 3 for the very same reason, just because it was so dull. There was no substance to the movie. Even if it was bad, there wasn't really anything for me to talk about. And I felt the exact same about this movie, but I gave myself a pass for Texas 3, and I thought, you know what, I can't do it twice in one series. I can't fully omit 2 movies. That's just a little bit excessive. So I am gonna fully review this movie today, sort of. And you'll see what I mean. It's just so rare that there's a movie that I don't want to talk about. It's just with this movie, it was so drab. It seemed to be completely missing the mark on what it was attempting. And just overall, because it was a terrible movie, I have nary an original thought in my head. Did I use nary correctly? I've actually literally never used that word before. Nary definition. Not any, not one. I did use it correctly. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna rattle off the few very fluffy, kind of not very substantial thoughts that I did have about the movie, and then I'm gonna react to what top critics had to say on Rotten Tomatoes and respond to their thoughts. I don't know, I thought that would be interesting because I don't have much that's very interesting to say about this movie, I don't think. My very few notes on the film. Number 1, the cinematography was very weird because for a lot of the time, especially in like the opening scenes, there were so many extreme close-ups on people's faces and the lens looked like a fisheye lens. It just seemed kind of distorted. The cinematography was very weird. The lighting was also kind of bad. It was like, I understood what they were going for. They were going for the same kind of dark, dingy look, probably at the original, you know, like at the dinner table, and it just didn't look good. Like it looked like it was not well lit. It was weird. And the cinematography style was not for me, and it wasn't my style. I didn't like it. This next note is, I guess, not really so much about the movie itself. I want to talk a little bit about Tobe Hooper. He was the executive producer on this movie, and I mean him no disrespect because I do respect the man. I love his original work. By that I mean the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But in the original, he was trying to make a comedy. It obviously had the very opposite effect and became one of the most memorable horror movies of all time. He was trying to make a comedy, and so this leads me to perhaps a very hot take. I don't think he's actually a very good director or producer. Ooh, I just don't think he's actually very good at those things because his original movie was a fluke. It had the complete opposite effect of what he had originally intended. And then with Texas Chainsaw 2, which if you've been around, you know I do not like that movie. I did not have a good time with it because he went so overboard with the comedy to get it across that it was in fact a comedy. Because obviously it did not work with the original and it just was one of the most disturbing and horrifying movies of all time. So with the second one, he laid the comedy and the corniness, the cheesiness. He laid it on super thick. And some people like it. Some people like that movie. And so his intentions were, they were successful, I guess. Not for me and not for a vast majority of audiences. It hasn't had the same effect. It did not live on at all in the same way as the original. He's had involvement with other movies in this series, and the only one that he has had involvement in that I liked was the 2003 remake, but he was just a co-producer, which that can really mean anything, because when you're a producer, that can mean a whole array of things. Some producers are in charge of the budget. Some producers are in charge of like hiring the different departments, stuff like that. Some producers are in charge of scheduling. Some producers are creative producers and they like are creative consultants. So I don't really know what his involvement was with the remake. I think honestly my opinion is they just slapped his name on it to get people to come see it. Because if you have the involvement of the original director in a remake, then, you know, people are more inclined to believe that it's gonna be good. It's gonna be, you know, maybe in the style of the original director because he has involvement, whatever. Every other movie that he is credited on in this franchise I found to be lazy and bad and not memorable. The only other movie that he has directed in his like, what was it, like 40 years of directing, of filmmaking? No, like 50. Like 50 years, right? In his 50 years of directing, the only other movie that he directed that gained any real notoriety and has lasted, you know, the test of time and whatever is Poltergeist. And I'm fairly certain that the only reason for that is because of a Mr. Steven Spielberg. From 1982, 86? I don't know. That is one of my favorite horror movies, so credit to him for that, for Poltergeist, for the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, for whatever involvement he had in the remake. But everything else he has done, I've not been a fan of, and I think it's because he doesn't understand how to tell his own story, and he also doesn't understand how to evoke the proper emotions in people. It just seems like audience reception to his movies always strays so far from his original intentions, unless he goes super overboard to prove the genre that he is making. Like in Texas Chainsaw 2, it just, the comedy was so over the top, so slapsticky, and it's like, okay, we get it. It's comedy. Let me know your thoughts on that. You know, obviously rest in peace. All respect to this man for the good things that he's done and for having such a lengthy career. I mean, props to him for that. And he might not be responsible for this 2017 movie being bad, but he was the executive producer, and given that he is the father of this franchise, his voice is very powerful, and especially as the executive producer, he could get things done the way that he wanted to, if he really wanted to. So I am inclined to believe that a lot of the poor choices of this movie were greenlit by him. And he was just fine with these terrible films being released to audiences that were probably longtime fans of his original movie. It doesn't really sit right with me. I don't know. Another complaint before I get to the critic reviews and reacting to those, the mentally ill patients were not treated very well in this film. The way they were written, very harmful stereotypes were pushed, and they used very typical tropes of scary, mentally ill people. And I'm not a fan of that. I don't like that. It was 2017. There was no reason to not be more socially conscious of that. I thought we were done stigmatizing mental illness. I thought we were done with that. But apparently not, because in this movie we had a girl with a very unknown condition. They don't explain what any of these people have, but there was a girl that shoved a baby mouse into another girl's mouth. And basically every other patient in this facility was kind of equally over the top, was equally violent or verbally abusive or, you know, stuff like that. Just these over the top depictions that are just not realistic. And also a lot of that, like the girl that was shoving the mouse in this other girl's mouth, a lot of stuff like that was just filler. It was just fluff. It was just stuff to make us uncomfortable. It didn't have anything to do with the plot, which, by the way, where was the plot? What happened to the plot of this movie? None of the characters seemed to have a main motivation that I could really gather. I was just like, well, what is the point? So yeah, based on all of that, obviously, I did not like it. I was so bored, I almost didn't make it through the movie. I thought about turning it off, but then I was like, no, I have to review this one because I didn't review number 3. Anyways, now it's time to react to the critic reviews of this movie. I'll do some good and some bad. So I'm gonna start out with one of the bad reviews, but I actually disagree with it. They said most egregiously that That is so pretentious. Most egregiously, it attempts to chart a rational evolution of an incomprehensible monster. I feel like they are equating Leatherface to the likes of like Michael Myers, to which if they said that about Michael Myers, I would agree, because Michael Myers is not supposed to be explained. He is just a force of evil. Leatherface, however, I think they had an opportunity to give him a very interesting backstory. There could have been so many different explanations to why he ended up the way that he is. And we did kind of get that in this movie, the reasons why he likes to wear a mask because of, you know, what happened to his face, his deformations and stuff. We did get those answers, and Leatherface is not supposed to be a monster. He's a human that has had these really terrible, unfortunate circumstances and grew up in this awful, disgusting family. And even in some of the movies, he's had somewhat of a redemption arc. He's a much more dynamic character than just being an incomprehensible monster. That's just simply false. So, there is a good thing that I had to say about this movie. I actually did enjoy some of the answers, some of the explanations that we got behind Leatherface. Most of the story was garbage. Let's not lose that. This one is technically a good review because it got a 2 out of 4. Like, it has a little tomato. Plot is strangely muddled, works out in the end, but you'll definitely be questioning whether you're watching the right movie for at least 30 minutes. That is facts. No. What? Oh my god. This one says, the blood and guts flow freely in Leatherface, but it's never even remotely horrific, let alone so absurdly shocking that it provides sick thrills. That's true. Because I've said I don't like gore, it's not really for me, but I do recommend gory movies to people that I know like gore, because for some people, they don't need a strong plot or anything, they don't really need anything else, they just like the gore. There is some pretty sick and disgusting gore in this movie, but it's like so few and far between when it happens, that it's like, even if you're not a plot heavy person, I don't think there's even enough gore for you to be satisfied. Even if you're a gore hound and that's all you really look for, it is gross in this movie, but there's not even enough of that. Okay, actually, most of these reviews are bad. Let me find a good one. Overall, Leatherface feels fresh and different from your standard horror slashers. It's an origin story that's compelling and its own entity. Is it though? Does it feel fresh? Does it feel different from a standard horror movie? Because when I was watching the movie, I was like, this is one of the laziest movies I've ever seen that relies on a lot of tropes and lazy writing. Also, a lot of it is stuff that we have most definitely seen before. So that review just feels incorrect to me. It doesn't, I don't know. This one I think is well said. Leatherface bears little resemblance to what inspired it, and while the intention to be different was certainly there, the story was not, and fans will likely forget it as soon as the credits roll. Yes, 100% that. I was so bored. It's one of the most forgettable movies, certainly, of the entire franchise. And it goes along so well with this next one. Sadly, the makers of Leatherface didn't put enough thought into a sleepy story that could easily be titled I Was a Teenage Leatherface. Yeah, it's just the reasoning for why he decides to turn evil. I'm not gonna spoil it, or I mean, he doesn't turn evil. The reason why he becomes the way that he becomes is just, it's kind of ludicrous. It's kind of like, yes, he came from an absurd family. Yes, he's not all there. But the reasoning for why he flipped his switch is it's just kind of a reach. It's really weak. And it just makes him look like a super angsty teenager that just, you know, decides to hate the world for one stupid little reason. And the story had the opportunity to be so much deeper. It could have been so... I know earlier I was talking about I liked some of the explanation that we got for why Leatherface was the way that he was. That's still true. I was referring to his deformities and why he wears his mask, not the actual origins of like why he changed. You get me. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about, I think. I think I'm done reacting to the critic reviews. They kind of just all are like saying the same thing, like it's forgettable, whatever. My main issue is just like, where's the effort? You know, I don't know who to blame for this because I'm like, my first instinct is kind of to blame Tobe Hooper because I'm like, how did he feel about his original movie? I've seen a bunch of interviews like in old documentaries and stuff, and he speaks highly of it. It seems like he's proud of the work that he did, so it just confuses me why he seemed to put so little attention to detail or put forth so little effort as an executive producer. And it was a prequel to his story. I just thought he would put more care into it, and maybe he did, but it's like I was saying earlier, and he's just not a very good producer slash director. I don't know. Because they really had the opportunity. It looks like they had a pretty sizable budget. Like, they had what's her face from The Conjuring starred in this movie. So it's just not adding up to me. I don't understand where the effort went. I don't understand this movie. A lot of the grittiness was there. I will give them that, but it was grittiness and gore that it didn't contribute anything. It didn't lead us anywhere, which when the plot is so thin, it has to. Like, all of that other stuff has to add up to something, and it just didn't. And again, I feel like it was such a wasted opportunity, and I feel like that's what this whole franchise has been to me. It's just been wasted opportunities to continue an amazing original story. So that does it. Basically, that does it for my review of Leatherface. Was it a review? Yeah, I reviewed the movie. For some reason, I feel like I was spending most of my time just airing my grievances about Tobe Hooper, which I don't even know if he was at fault. So there it was. That was my first review of 2021. Did you like it? Did you have fun listening to me rant for like 15 to 20 minutes or however long this video is gonna be? But yeah, so that was my last review of my Texas Chainsaw Massacre series. I don't have much else planned for this series just because this franchise was kind of dry and a lot of it I did not find to be interesting. Whereas with Halloween, obviously there are like 20 plus videos in that series, which if you're new, by the way, I have covered the Halloween franchise, Friday the 13th, I did Nightmare on Elm Street, I'm also currently doing Child's Play, but as part of this series, I am doing a collaboration. I'm so excited. I'm doing a collaboration with Sledgehammer Horror. If you don't know, Ken is like amazing. He is totally on the rise in the horror community. He hit 1,000 subs like that. Like, he is so charismatic. He is a great person, and I'm so excited to have him on my channel. I did do a collaboration with him, and we talked about our favorite scenes from Jaws, which is also one of my favorite horror movies. That was a great time. You should definitely go to his channel, subscribe to him. Our collaboration could be coming next week just because I don't have much else planned for this franchise. So definitely stay tuned. I'll link his channel down below if you want to check him out beforehand. But that does it. I hope you enjoyed my rant. I feel like I do this a lot more frequently now because when I first started YouTube, I was so scared to like say anything negative about movies. I was so scared to be negative. I was scared to fully voice my opinions. I watered them down quite a bit because I used to be a very I was shy. And I feel like that's kind of the evolution of all YouTubers. When you first start out, you're very monotone and you're just, hi, and also I thought this about this thing and we thing-a-ling-a-ding and thanks and subscribe to my channel. Which then that evolves to you just yelling at your camera. So thank you for growing with me. I'm so appreciative to have all of my subscribers. I love you all so much. I'm so looking forward to this new year. Like, I'm so excited for all the stuff that I have planned, as you saw from my video on Friday. I'm excited for where we're gonna go, and sorry to kick it off with such a negative review, but such is life. If you want to follow me on social media, that'll all be linked down below. I also have a vlog channel. Also check out that Patreon. I'm excited about that, if you couldn't tell. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I catch you in the next one. Bye!